I believe Coach Saban might be with Pat and the boys. I don't know if they how everything's going, but I feel like you guys are opened up and good to go. What's up, Pat? How's it going?
Love Coach Cignetti having the success that he's having. We're 3 wide, brother, and obviously sleeveless hoodie that was gifted to me by the Indiana football program. My name's Pat. In the middle there is Connor Campbell, son of Steven. And on the left side of your screen there, looking mighty fine, mighty sharp, and mighty young, doesn't he?
Incredible. I don't know, 52 maybe?
No, 48.
48, sure, 35.
Ladies and gentlemen, go Coach Saban.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Coach, you missed the rain. I hope it doesn't come down on that incredible blazer you're rocking right now. We just talked to Coach Cignetti here on the program. He gave you a lot of credit, man. I hope we'll clip it and send it back to you. I don't want to say he almost got emotional, but he numerous times went back to learning from you about how to win, organizational structure, setup, everything like that. Whenever you had Coach Cignetti as an assistant coach in the Coach Saban Coaching University, what do you remember of him, and how much have you talked to him now, obviously, since this Indiana run has started?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the things that guys like Coach Cignetti had an advantage of is, when we went to Alabama, they weren't very good. So, therefore, we built the program from scratch. I mean, we were 7-6 the first year, 12-0 the second year, lost to Florida in the SEC championship game. So the whole culture of the program got built. A lot of the guys that became assistants in 2016 and 2018, and they're now the head coach at wherever, the program was already successful. It was almost like the players. The players that we recruited in the beginning came because they wanted to do something special and prove something. But then it was more like, well, what can Alabama do for me?
Yeah.
Later on. So Kurt actually got to see it built from the ground up. I think it was a great experience for me because we learned a lot along the way from each other. But I do think that he probably saw, all these intangible things that are necessary to have a successful program and to be able to sustain it. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that he took away from that. I don't talk to our former assistants unless they call me. They call me when they have issues or problems, or they're trying to make decisions, or is there somebody that I could talk to, just like, some coaches, when they have a bye week, they say, can we talk during the bye week? I'd like to discuss things with you. So when that happens, I talk to them.
You don't want to add extra shit in their life there. Sending text messages, hey, how we doing? I'm on game day, got to talk about this. See, that's the difference between you and me. I don't text anybody because I don't know any of these guys, but I appreciate the fact that you're like, I don't want to add any more bullshit into your life.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Rich?
The only thing I'll ask is something like this is I always ask a coach, is there something that you want to talk about? Is there a point that you want to make? And I'll give you the opportunity to do that through the question that I ask you or whatever.
Okay, so Coach Cignetti mentioned about how he feels as long as you have the support, any P4 program can have success. AD, Scott, very excited and thankful that football is doing well. They sold this place out for the rest of the season, 52,000 plus. That was never like that. I told him, I said, there was times through my tenure here living in Indiana, there'd be 100 people watching a Big Ten football game here at Indiana. I mean, it is complete night and day. With the collective he started, he has money. Do you think it is sustainable for this Indiana team to continue to go? And is Cignetti a guy at 62 who is just kind of hitting his stride as a coach, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think, he's been a good coach for a long time. He just had success at programs that, whether they were Division II, 1AA, that people didn't pay that much attention to. But if you evaluate his success rate, it was very, very good. Now he's at some place that people notice. So I think that's the big difference. But I do think that if you have the right circumstance in any college program, you're willing to invest because, right now it's about money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are just come down to money. I mean, where players go to school comes down to money. So if you have a collective and you have money, you're going to have an opportunity to be successful. You're going to be able to retain the players on your team that you want to retain, almost like a pro team. And you're also going to be able to get free agents to come into your program. And you're also going to be able to recruit better high school players because you got financial opportunities for them as well. So I do think that's a piece. That's something that everybody's had to adapt to in the last 4 or 5 years. That was never a circumstance in college athletics before. It was all about having a program, helping guys develop personally, academically, athletically. But now there's, sort of a new sheriff in town when it comes to this money thing, and everybody's got to pay attention to it. But I do think that it allows everybody the opportunity to be successful if you have the resources.
Well, they obviously have money, and they have for basketball for a while. Like, that has been kind of the bread and butter here in Indiana. Now the eyes going to the football team. I think it's going to be good for SIG. And you mentioned Mark Cuban graduated from here. I think he's running for president. Is Mark Cuban running for president right now?
That is correct.
Is
Yeah.
that
Really?
He's running for president right now. I think is what. Whenever he realizes what's happening with the football team, I think that's going to be something he's going to want to get involved with. Connor has a question for Coach.
Yeah, Coach, we were talking about it earlier. What about the age thing? Like, it feels like because Sig is 62, he didn't get opportunities at other places. Do you think schools don't want an older coach per se, and do you think they think about, to your point about the recruiting, like, hey, if we hire a guy who's older, he might not be able to connect with kids on the same way a 40-year-old head coach might be able to?
Well, I think the kid connection part of it is all about the person and the personality of the person and how you've adapted through the years. Me personally, I was 72 the last year I coached. I had no problem relating to players, and I think if you asked the players, they would say the same thing. But I changed a lot through the years because the players actually changed, in terms of what their commitment was and, what their purpose was in terms of why were they going to college and what were they trying to accomplish. So you had to kind of adapt your program and the way you approach them. You had to make things. When I first started coaching, if you told a guy to do something, he'd run through the wall for you just because you said to do it. Well, it's not like that anymore. You kind of got to show these guys where it's going to benefit them.
Why am I running through a wall real quick?
Well, but you don't need to do that. But you had to show them where it was going to create value, for them individually, and even being a part of a team, how that's creating value for your future. So you have to be able to adapt, and I don't think age has anything to do with that. I think Kirk Cetti understands that. The fact that he's 62, he'll coach for another 10, 15 years, probably. And I hope that he continues to have success. So, for me, I did it for 50 years. And I just thought that, this last year was really a tough year for me. And I'm saying, how many quality years do you have left and how do you want to spend them? And, me and Miss Terry get up every day and have our coffee, and we're happy now, so I'm good.
And now you get to spend time with me and Connor on a
Hell
phone call.
yeah.
Yeah, and I love that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boys hanging out.
AJ back at the Thunderdome has a question for you, Coach.
Yeah, Coach, you've had so many of your assistants go on to be great head coaches. Like, when do you know that some of your assistants are going to be great head coaches? Can you tell when you hire them? And I would assume,
Or trap.
Yeah, and I would assume when you hire a coach, do you want them to aspire to become a head coach someday?
Yeah, I always looked for guys that had what I call aspirations instead of needing inspiration, because when you want some inspiration, that means somebody else has to motivate you to do something. But when you have aspirations, that means you have goals to do something and accomplish something. So I wanted guys that wanted to be head coaches. If they were assistants, I wanted them to be coordinators, because they're going to learn big picture things and contribute more to the program in more ways than just coaching their position. So absolutely. And to answer when do you know, I think when a guy is in a position of responsibility, a coordinator, even if it's a special teams coordinator, and how they manage that, how they manage the room, how they motivate the players that they're responsible for, the kind of discipline and how the players respond to them. I think when you see that happen in a real positive way, you can sort of bet that if this guy was a head coach, he'd be successful as well, because it's just a bigger group that you have to deal with.
Yeah, special teams coordinators have to deal with the whole team, offense and defense. You know that. That's why they're so vital into the next head coaching step. Did you ever have a crap coach on your staff? All we ever hear about is guy goes, Coach Saban, boom, becomes a head coach.
Yep.
Did you ever have guys that are like crap early and be like, I don't want this guy coaching my team anymore? Like, legitimately, did that ever happen?
I only fired one guy in the whole time I was a head coach. And that was my fault, because I hired a guy to do a job that he really wasn't qualified to do.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, Rich
It was
Rod-
like the guy was like an offensive line coach, and I hired him to be the special teams coach.
Got it.
Well, that's not really what he was, and it didn't work out very well. But it wasn't his fault; it was my fault.
Yeah.
And now, there were guys that you had on your staff that you want everybody to be different. Some coaches like for everybody to be the same. And even in business, I talk to these business groups, and they want people to be, like cut out of the same mold. I wanted everybody to be different. I wanted some guys to be real good recruiters, and some guys to, pat the guys on the back and rub their neck, and some guys to get after them when they need. I wanted different guys that had different strengths. Some guys had great knowledge and experience and were great presenters, and other guys they could just coach technique. So everybody was a little different, but it was, the sum of those parts that made the staff really strong. And so I didn't want people that were the same. I wanted people that were different.
You want a diverse portfolio of coaches in the room because you never know what's going to reach a certain player too, right?
Yeah, because you got a diverse group of players that have different personalities. And one of the things that I think helped us be successful through the years is we were able to get more personality types, different kinds of guys, to be able to play well from a mental standpoint. Psychological disposition. They didn't have it, but we could create it for them and help them do it. And I think that's what helped us be successful.
How do you think I would have fared in one of your locker rooms?
You'd have done great. We'd have needed a little, some mental health,
Juice?
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
Of course. But we had 25 years experience there, and we'd have applied it all.
That's awesome. Ty has a question for you back in the Thunderdome.
Yeah, Coach, switching to the SEC, it seemed like for the longest time, at least when you were coaching at Alabama, you guys were going to win the SEC pretty much. And then recently here, Georgia's kind of come on. Are you surprised at how much parity is in the SEC this year? And do you think with Texas and Oklahoma and as the conferences get bigger, that's kind of just going to be commonplace where we see these teams jockeying for first place week in, week out, and everyone's kind of cannibalizing themselves?
Yeah, I think there's more parity in the SEC because I think players want to come to the SEC. So the system that we have now allows more players with more experience and proven quality to be able to come to the SEC. In other words, it doesn't have to just be recruiting. You take a team like Ole Miss, and I think Lane's done a great job there, so I'm not being critical in this, but he's actually used the portal to his benefit to be able to have a top-notch team. And other teams use recruit, like Georgia, they still are going to recruit. Alabama's going to recruit. They're going to use the portal some, but not as much. So that helps some of the teams that weren't quite as good get better quickly so that they can compete with those top-level teams. So, and I think the Big Ten you're going to see some of that in the Big Ten. But I think those two conferences, because of the strength that both those conferences have, they're going to have a little bit of advantage in this new day and age that we're living in.
Texas Vandy tomorrow. That's cool. Mm-hmm. AJ, we were talking about that this morning in the game day meeting. After what just happened with Georgia, then you got Vandy the next week. It's not like that. This ain't Vandy yesterday.
Tough Vandy.
And you talk about transfer portal and NIL can kind of make anybody good. You bring in one player, you change the entire culture. It's like every week this college season feels like there's been massive games. I love where we're headed when it comes to a competition standpoint. Do you agree? And did you forecast the season to go this way with the realignment, with the transfer portal, with the NIL? Did you expect it to give us as many highlights as it has thus far?
I think what I expected was because of the 12-team playoff, there would be a lot more interest, a lot more passion, because there'd be a lot more teams that could stay alive. I never envisioned that because of that name, image, and likeness, paying players, basically. It's not really name, image, and likeness. It's just pay for play.
That's a whole nother conversation.
That would have such an impact that we would be creating a situation where you don't have a salary cap and you have free agency, but the combination of those two teams would allow teams to improve at a very high level very quickly.
Yeah, like here, for instance. I mean,
Yeah.
Signetti
And Vandy, as you were talking about.
Vandy,
Yeah.
big, here, big.
Yeah.
It's like some of these schools, and AJ knows this because AJ actually had a Halloween party to raise money for the NIL for Ohio State.
Huge party.
Huge
It's for,
party.
for,
You know?
Cancer Hospital coach. Don't listen to him. You know that.
Oh, okay.
So they say.
They have other events for the NIL collective and everything like that. There's always going to be schools that are more than, everybody else, but everybody having a little bit of a piece to potentially give shapes things up quickly for programs. Go ahead, Con, man.
Yeah, few of these teams, coach, as soon as they get the 1 seed, it feels like right away there's either an aura or a pressure that comes with it, and they're losing. It's almost like a curse. In Oregon, they asked Dan Lanning about how does it feel to be the 1 seed for the first time since 2012 or whatever it was, and he said, who cares? Is there something to that when you get that 1 seed that your team looks around and almost feels an added pressure or feels like they've made it somewhere? And how do you talk to the team once you are that top seed?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think there is something to that. I think that's why you see a little difficulty in people staying at number 1 for very long. I think people get complacent pretty easily. And, if you went into a room and you had a whole team full of guys and you stand up and said, who wants to be number 4? Nobody had raised their hand. If you said, who wants to be number 1? Everybody had raised their hand.
Yeah.
All right, so once you get there, there's an automatic psychological, I call it relief syndrome, that I should be able to rest on my laurels. But as soon as you rest on your laurels, you really became the team everybody wanted to beat. So now it's even more competitive when you play. And then I think people are affected by external factors. You're hearing, you're number 1. You're number 1. So, but it doesn't really mean anything because it doesn't matter to be number 1 until you're number 1 at the end. So you have to keep focused on what you need to do to continue to improve, to play better. And I always try to get guys to play to a standard. In other words, I never talked about winning. I never talked about winning the SEC. I never talked about winning the national championship. I said, this is the standard that we want to play to. If we can play to the standard, then we'll beat the teams we're supposed to beat, and we'll put ourselves in a position to have a chance to play for a championship. But you got to play to the standard first, and you got to do it one play at a time, every play in the game, no matter who you're playing. It doesn't matter. You cannot let external factors affect your psychological disposition to compete.
Coach, isn't it crazy that everybody that's at your level of success in sports all views it the same way? And then there's still people that are like, nah, I'm going to do it differently.
But it's really not.
It's like process-driven is everything for the super successful people.
That's exactly right. But that's not normal. Michael Jordan's not normal. Kobe Bryant's not normal. Those guys, Tiger Woods is not normal. I mean, because they won championships, but they kept winning. They didn't let the winning affect who they were. They still were driven to perfection. They were still driven to be the best. But most people, once they get there, they lose some of that drive. They get satisfied. And, success is not a continuum. It's momentary. Right? And unless you keep doing all the things that you've done and then even continue to try to improve what you've done in the past and get better, more. And it's hard.
Yeah, especially whenever you get to the top of that mountain. You're looking around. You see everybody, how small they look.
Nice view.
Oh, it is. What about if the view isn't as good, though? There's sometimes that happens, too. People work their ass off to get to the top, then they get there and they're like, I wasted my life for this.
But the big thing is when you get to the top, you become the mountain.
Ooh.
Because that's what everybody's shooting at. Now they're trying to be you. All right. Now the challenge is they got your game scheduled every week, circled every week. All right. We want to beat these guys because they were at the top of the mountain. So if you don't keep climbing beyond the mountain, you're toast.
Hey, once you get to the top, that's when the climb actually begins. AJ Hawk has a question for you. He's been a champion multiple times.
Yeah, Coach, is it exhausting to sustain that standard? Because I just know as a parent, it'd be easy sometimes to ignore when my kid has some terrible behavior. But hey, we can't. You let them get away with it one time, then that's it. And as a coach, I would imagine day to day dealing with so many players and so many factors. Does that get exhausting? I mean, obviously you got to get your coaching staff and get all of them coached up on it. But how did you continue that, like you said, for 50 years?
Yeah, well, I never got tired of it because I knew this is what it takes to win. how do we get the intangible things right in the organization so the player has a chance to be successful and we have a chance to be successful as a team? And as soon as you feel like you can't do that anymore, you better go do something else, because you're not going to have the culture on your team you need to have to be able to be successful. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And now, if you can establish that culture, you have even a greater advantage, because to me, the challenge to establish it is greater, because the multiples of things that affect people are greater than they've ever been. I'm talking about transfer, and I'm talking about money. So what is a guy's commitment to the team? What is his commitment to being the best he can be? Or does he just want to participate? There's a big difference in those two things.
Yeah.
I'm just going to participate, be on the team, do what I got to do.
Check some boxes.
Yeah. All right. So, but you need guys that are committed to really doing the best that they can possibly do to be the best that they can be, and they got to be driven to want to win and win championships. But you got to be a champion first, so you got to be committed to yourself.
Have you always been okay with being the bad guy? So, for instance, I have throughout my life been the one who has chosen to say the things that maybe everybody else has been thinking, but doesn't want to be the bad guy for it. A leader of an operation, you have to be the bad guy sometimes. Have you always wanted that? Have you always been that? How is that kind of...
Yeah, but I don't know that being the bad guy is the right way to say it. If you tell me what you want to accomplish, you tell me.
Okay.
And then you're not doing something that is going to enhance your opportunity to do that. And I call you in my office and say, Pat, how's this behavior going to help you accomplish these goals you told me? How does that make me the bad guy? I mean, I'm just showing you that you wanted to do this. This is what you have to do it. How is this behavior going to help you do it? And you're going to look at me and say, yeah, Coach, you're right. Is that being a bad guy?
No.
Or is that being a good guy for you? Even though might not be telling you what you want to hear, I'm just telling you what you need to hear.
Have to hear.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to... That's a great way to phrase it. I'm going to start looking at it that way whenever I got to chew some of these fucking guys out. You know what I mean?
And I can tell you, they need it.
Yeah. Amen. Come into the office. Come into the office. Big story revolving around an Alabama guy, one of your guys. And obviously, we got a chance to chat with you immediately after it happened. Tua's returning to football this weekend. Yeah. You said immediately, obviously, it's going to be a medical decision. Guy loves ball. Great human. Have never heard somebody say, good, thank you. Whenever you ask him how he's doing, always well, thank you, or whatever. Like, nicest guy of all time.
Thanks for asking.
Thanks for asking. There he is. He's coming back to play this weekend. How do you feel about him? What do you expect from him? And how excited are you to see Tua back on a football field? Obviously, a place he loves.
Right. Well, I'm concerned that I want Tua to be safe and healthy and not have a football career that's going to impact him down the road.
Agreed.
All right, number one. Mm-hmm. All right, number two is I think organizationally, this is a medical decision. This is not an organizational decision. People look at him and say, why are they letting him play? I think the doctors make that decision. It's a medical decision. Then for him, it becomes personal then as to, I really want to play. I'm a competitor. I love playing. I want to play. So he has to make a decision. Is the risk reward from a medical standpoint worth it to you? And I think all those things are in play now. If he wants to play, which I've talked to him and I know he wants to play, I know what kind of competitor he is, then I'm happy for him that he's having the opportunity to play, but I also pray for him that he doesn't have any issues.
We all are doing the same thing. We all assumed he was going to play football again because he's a football guy. That's literally all we've been told. And if a doctor clears a football guy to go play football, especially if there's hundreds of millions of dollars potentially, all the factors in it, he's going to go play. But man, all of us are going to be watching that game. And every game he plays, just like...
Every hit.
Come on, And we're pulling for it. And it happened, 4 times, 3 times? How many, Gumpy, how many?
3.
3 times, and we've all seen it. Think about all the plays where it didn't happen. Now it feels like every single play he's going to be watched, and we're pulling for him. Tua sounds like a dog, though.
He is. And I think one thing about Tua, and I always try to reiterate this, every time he got hurt at Bama, there was not a play to be made, and he tried to make a play. When he broke his hip, Ruggs fell down. There was no place to throw the ball, and he's scrambling trying to make a play. There's no play to be made. He got what do they call it when they tight rope your ankle? He was scrambling, and there was no play to be made. And somebody jumped on his back, and he twisted his ankle. I think there's a way that you have to play your position at quarterback, that there's a time when you got to know you got to give up on the play. There is no play to be made here. I mean, you want to play with toughness. I admire his grit. I admire his toughness, his mental toughness. But you also have to know when, hey, I need to slide. I don't need to take a hit so that I can continue to be able to play and be healthy and not put myself at risk. I do think that's important for him.
Tua's going to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Tua's going to do that.
Come on.
We can't wait to watch. Another former Alabama guy just went bananas. Amari Cooper arrives at the Bills, goes crazy. We knew that was going to happen, obviously.
Yeah, but I told you about Amari Cooper the last show.
Yes.
You know, everybody's questioning, why does the guy keep geting traded? Nothing wrong with the guy.
No.
He's a good guy. He's a good player. I mean,
Too good. Should be on the Colts. What the hell are we doing?
Well, that wouldn't make sense.
Huh?
That wouldn't make sense. He's a winner. You know,
Josh
he went to
Allen just
Alabama.
immediately. I mean, it's just pick it up right up. And I think you saying what you said on our show has potentially helped Bills Mafia and maybe his teammates in Buffalo understand too. Like, hey, he's a quiet dude. Doesn't mean he's checked out. Just means he's very quiet. Always has been. Buffalo seems like a perfect culture for him. And they needed another weapon. And lo and behold, he's scoring tuds already, being there 4 days.
well, I'm happy for him. That's great.
It is. You know what else is great? The fact that we get to hang out with you every single Friday and on Saturday mornings. We appreciate the hell out of you, Coach.
Good. Great being here. I like it, man. And I do think these guys need a little ass chewing, though.
Absolutely.
Well, you don't know half of it. I mean, you don't know that.
You're supposed to be the head coach of this group.
You're talking about relief syndrome? They're starting to read little press clippings. Oh, this show's doing good, yada, yada, yada. We got guys leaving work early. We got guys not following rules. I mean, it's a whole thing. Attention to detail needs to happen, Coach. I'm going to call
Let me just tell you something. If you ain't coaching it, you're letting it happen.
All right, Coach.
All right, that's your ass.
All right, I get it. Ladies and gentlemen, Coach Saban.
Yeah.